Sup, y'all? Reaver of Trees. Make sure it's recording. It is. Good. All right. So I wanted to go over the last little bit of, like, not the last little bit of the computer, but a few things here. This is for tuning up your processor head for while you're processing. Uh, After you've already set the diameters, the AD value, made sure everything is proper, this is the next step to make sure that your machine or your head is at least running as well as it can. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to come into the computer. You're going to go into the feeding menu. You're going to go into feeding. Now, in order to access the menu, this is with a touch screen. You can also get into it with your keyboard by holding in Control and pressing A. That'll bring up the main menu. Use your arrows to go down and select feeding, and this will bring you to this place here. Once we're in here, there's some important information. So, your braking distance. That is how far it's going to stop before it gets, or as it slows down as it gets to its length there. So, this is typically what you're going to mess around with a little bit, and the approach current, I'll explain that in a second, for anytime you're getting searching issues. The acceleration and the max current. Max current is the maximum amount that it's going to put out from the valve for the feed speed. It's typically just slightly below what the maximum is. Maximum is 700. So 650, slightly below, that is the default. The acceleration, the default on that is actually 20. I don't know how many times I've got into a machine and I've seen that at 7,000 or 5,000 or something along those lines. It's not required. So the acceleration, just keep it at the default, a little bit higher if you like. If you are like this, as you can see, default is 20. We're going to cancel out. All right. The feeding level is just basically your auto feed. Number one is just manual. As you select the pre-select, it'll go out there. Number two, it'll go to the next one. Number three, faster. You always want to have your branch rammer. You don't ever want them both feeding directions, only feeding forward. You have it on both directions and it will kind of have like a little seizure. And that's the important stuff of this screen here. The approach current should be between 220 and 240. You can go 250 if you like, but that is how much the feed or the speed slows down as it gets to its distance, so that it can get to the proper length and you don't overshoot or surge or anything along those lines. It's very nice when it's all working. So if you are having the searching issues, I do believe I went over that in another video. It's just those two that you're going to adjust. Moving on. The feed rollers. You want your feed roller graph to be almost a straight line, little bit less. You want it to a subtle curve, as you can see. I usually like to go 4 points, like these 4 points here. What I like to do is I like to go 6 inches apart. Start off at 4 inches, as you can see, 10, 16, 20, or 16, and then we're at, well, I think it's around 22. And what I like to do is I start up here at around 550, and by the time I get down here, it's about 450 or 400, and I like to go around 25 points in difference between each one. You can tweak, you're going to be tweaking it afterwards, but this is to give you the baseline. The next screen is your knives. You're delimiting knives. So this is the pressure for this. You want the pressure on this to be a little less than the feed rollers. So that way there, that you're not ending up spinning out, you're not tying anything off. Again, same kind of concept. You're going to go 4, 10, 16, 22. Someone was in messing around with this and they've knocked it back 2 inches. So it's like 2, 8, 14. Anyway, so what you're going to do with these is same kind of concept. You'll start off here around like 400 for I'd say 425, somewhere around there. And you're going to make it come down with it all the way down into from here down into here. And as you can see, as we come across, let's touch on it there, 315. So I've gone down over 100 points in just that there. Now, the biggest thing is making sure that your diameters are on. And if the diameters are on, the next step is the most important after you have all of this tuned up, is to process the wood. And then as you're processing the wood, pay attention to the diameters where you're having an issue. For instance, say around, you're feeding a tree and you notice around 14 inches around, it seems to be gripping tighter on the feed roller or tighter on the knives or something like that. That is where you would come in here, and here we are back. So you are going to notice the diameter, which is across the bottom here. So if it's around like this area here, where you notice that it is a little too tight, you can come in, touch this point, and move it down by 10 points. When you do that, you're reducing the amount of pressure that is put on at that diameter. And you're just trying to fine tune it at this point. It's going to require about an hour of processing, paying attention, just going in and out of the computer and adjusting it slightly as you go through. Trust me, once you have your diameter set and you have your baseline of your graph, just tweaking it doesn't take that long, and it will last you the whole dang season. And any time where you start having issues, more than likely it's as a result of your diameter sensor either getting weak, the diameter sensor being misaligned, and the AD value going off, which would throw off your diameters, and then therefore throw off everything that it feeds with. Everything on the head is based on the diameters. That's why they are important. As much as owners, in my opinion, have been very negligent, oh, just run it, eyeball it and stuff like that. Yes, you can do that. But in order for it to run at peak efficiency, the diameters need to be on point so that everything else is on point. It's just a matter of trial and error and tweaking as you go through, and you'll get your pressures proper. That'll help with the feeding. That'll help with stalling the feed rollers. That'll help with the knives gripping too tight. You just adjust it 10 points up and down as required. Same thing if you find that the knives are too loose, say around the 6-inch diameter mark. At that point, you would then bump it up 10 points and see if that helps. It will adjust the graph accordingly. One last thing is the pulse. This is important. I never like the default of the pulse. Okay, so as you can see, the default, they have 6 and 8, 6 and 8. I don't like that. 11 to 12 for the opening time forward, and 12 to 14 for the opening time backwards. That is ideal. I find 11 and 12 is the best. 12 and 13, sure, but in around this area here. The opening distance, how far your knives will open as they pulse. If you have it open too much, if you have it like the default 3.9, if you have it that way, your knives are going to try to open quite a bit. Even though it's minuscule, you may have a chance of these smaller logs being pushed down by the length wheel. The force on the length wheel is like 800 psi on down pressure. So if you're not having enough pressure on your knives, or you have too big of an opening distance, your feed wheel will or your length wheel will actually push the tree down, throwing off everything. So having that too high can be a bad thing. Second of all, minimum time between pulses. They put the pulses super quick together. It's all in milliseconds, so it's not like it makes a huge difference. However, I find between 50 and 60 for the minimum time between the pulses to be ideal for when feeding. Also, the pulse period feed backwards. Its default is 40. It seems to work pretty well there. If you do have any issues when you're trying to back feed, you can increase that up by 5-10 points, up to 50, and that will keep it open a little bit longer as you're feeding backwards, and hopefully make it a little smoother as it's going through. But that there is the computer. There's a lot of other things to adjust in here, but that there will give you the proper feeding for the machine. I tweak it at the start of the season. I'll do the diameters, I'll tweak the graph, make sure that everything, as long as the pressures are set proper too. That's another thing, pressures and diameters. So once you have all that, the computer stuff is easy, and once you set it up once, you're pretty much golden for the rest of the season. Anytime where something starts to slip, it's usually something in the valve, maybe the pressures got turned down, shock valve, any of those things there could be a possibility, but you don't have to worry about the computer. I hope this helps. This usually, when you buy another machine, usually a used machine, the numbers are out to lunch. A lot of operators like to go in and just change it without actually knowing what everything does. And I've seen it just crank to the max. Well, you crank everything to the max and you're going to have some problems. All right. I think that's going to be it for now. I'm going to go back to enjoying my coffee. Y'all have a great day. Reaper of Trees signing out. Like and subscribe. Any questions, comments, and just put them in the comments, and I'll see if I can get to them at some point or another. Definitely try to help you out. All right. Best of luck to y'all.